Hello, everyone. Happy July. We made it to July. We're here for Manuscript Monday, our first day of July, 2024. My name is Lee. I'm the technical director for Manuscript Society on this program. Thanks for joining us virtually on this lovely evening. We've got just a few kind of housekeeping things here. We'll see a chat box at the bottom of your panel here. You'll see your speakers and then the shared screen as well. So if you want to say a quick hello to us let us know where you're joining from. This chat box will be where we can all converse there. And if there's any notes, any comments and such, we'll drop those in there, please. And if you have any technical difficulties, I'm going to go ahead and drop my uh, cell phone or I'll do my email in here for you all. So if you have any trouble hearing anything, just go ahead and send me an email and I'll get back to you, anything like that. So that'll be on there for y'all. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brian with the Manuscript Society to welcome us all to this event.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Manuscript Monday. Going into our third year of our Manuscript Mondays, comes every first Monday of the month for a long period of time. We have a great program tonight. You can see it's a rare book summer picnic. They are not our speakers there, but you'll see our speakers right there, and we're going to get to them in just a little bit. We welcome you. We've invited a whole lot of folks, and we have a whole lot of folks attending too. Lee's going to give us some technical support, and I'm just delighted to have you there with us. I'm honored to be your host for this evening. Let me tell you a little bit about our speakers and what's coming up right now. Our speakers are Christine Vonderlyn, and Christine Vonderlyn was born and raised in the Hudson River Valley, a graduate of Bard College. She studied art, architectural history, material culture, and foodways. She managed a bookstore and was an archivist of the Livingston Family Library and Art Collection at the Claremont Historic Site in Columbia County before moving to New York City. In '93, she joined Swan Galleries in New York City and served as a specialist in rare books, cataloging and selling literature, fine press, and illustrated books. She co-founded both their illustration art department and the LGBTQ plus art, material culture, history, and sales. In 2023, she joined Honey and Wax Booksellers to continue her love of books and illustrations and to lecture, write, and appraise material in her areas of expertise. While working, Christine graduated from Natural Gourmet ICE Culinary Institute. She continues her lifelong interest in food, drink, sustainable agriculture as president of the Board of Trustees of the Metuchen Farmers Market in New Jersey. And I hear that's a pretty spectacular place to go and visit on the weekends. Lizzy Young's our other speaker. Her first career was as a pastry chef, studying at Peter Kump's cooking school under Nick Malagieri. I think I got that right. Lizzy went on to work at Windows on the World. Later, Lizzy made her way to the Gourmet magazine, eventually becoming a food editor. In 2009, she began her career in bookselling, joining her father, Roy Young, of Roy Young Booksellers. During the 3 years she worked with Roy, Lizzy learned every aspect of the rare book trade and attended the Rare Book School at the University of Virginia. Some great programs down there. In 2011, Lizzy stepped out onto her own, opening Lizzy Young Booksellers. And she says at Lizzy Young Bookseller, we sell rare books, ephemera, and manuscripts with a focus on food and drink history, women's history, culture history, children's books, and anything else that makes us smile, she says. Her main client base is comprised of public and private special collections at universities and libraries. And I am really excited about this great summer program. I welcome you both. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brian. That was great. We had to go with that Sense and Sensibility classic picnic scene. In Austin, picnics. It's all the best.
And I really want to be on that picnic table right there. That's just amazing.
Right.
Okay. So tell us what are we doing tonight?
What are we doing tonight?
We're chatting books, we're chatting food. Lizzy, you want to go first? Tell us.
Well, I mean, we're talking about how food, and especially food within manuscripts, hits every part of our culture.
So we're going beyond cookbooks. This is not about cookbooks, right?
It's, it is cookbooks, but it's also what you find in cookbooks. It's what you find in written account books. You find what you find in diaries, what you find in scraps of paper in books, and those are the things that really bring life to the objects that we research.
I see. Great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we both have, very firm, solid backgrounds in this world. I can give my background, Lizzy, you can give yours, and then to kind of flesh out our bios and let people know.
Give us a little more than I gave you.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And so, first, thanks everybody for this program. A shout out to the Manuscript Society folks who've been wonderful. And to my dear colleague friend, Lizzy Young, who I really wanted to join me in this program tonight. I feel like we're kindred spirits, and books and food have always been a very integral part of our lives since we were young. And it informs what we do in our professional lives and our personal lives, and we've carried that through. I was born and raised in the Hudson Valley. That's really what inspired my love of these subjects. The Hudson Valley was still very rural in the 70s and 80s. There were still a lot of orchards. There was fishing. There was farming. I had best friends who lived on living farms, like active farms. It was also a great early start to the farm to table movement. There were great restaurants there. I remember a big highlight of my childhood was when my parents would take us to the Culinary Institute of America, which was right down the road in Hyde Park. That was a big thing. And that's really where I learned the beauty of food, taste, textures, what service, food and restaurant service could be like. And I just loved it and gravitated to it. And so that really informed my first job. So the part about working for the Livingston family, before, Hudson Valley, I needed a car for everything. So you had to get a job where you could walk or take a bike. And we lived in a great town called Tivoli, which is right on the Hudson. And I took my bike, and my first job was as a tour guide for the Livingston family home, Claremont. Robert Livingston was the signer of a declaration. He swore George Washington, his oath for presidency. He also worked on the steamship. He was a founder, a backer for Robert Fulton's steamship. So I was a tour guide, but I would take people around the house. But the thing that I loved more than anything was the kitchen. I'd stop at the kitchen. Everybody got the super uber kitchen tour when Christine was doing those tours. And then they knew that I loved the library. So when they needed help with the archives, I was up there going through everything. Once again, what did I gravitate to? All of the letters and manuscripts that talked about their banquets, the events in the house. Who did they entertain? What did they serve? We did a little exhibition on food. So this whole love of food and books and manuscripts came together, and I could see the importance. I understood what material culture was about, what it could do. And that really informed my college studies, first at Bradford College in New England, then Bard College. And I studied material culture, art, foodways, and it really led to my long career at Swan and at Honey and Wax. I still have a focus on those areas, and I cataloged at Swan. I cataloged and gave tours about the gastronomy books when I could. It was really terrific, but yet I wasn't done with it. Like I still felt like I wanted more. And I was very inspired by Julia Child. She was a great role model for me. In fact, my sister and her travel agency were Julia Child's travel agents in Boston. So my sister actually got to see that great Smithsonian kitchen in situ in Cambridge. So I'm forever jealous about that. And I did that. Somehow I thought I could do 5 auctions a year and go to cooking school on nights and weekends and do a giant internship. But I did because I felt it continued this connection in my life, right? And so I went to a wonderful institution. I interned at the first LEED certified campus for, it was a living facility for disabled children and adults. But what I loved is that they integrated organic cooking, agriculture, farming into the therapies of their residents. And I absolutely loved that. So I worked in all of the different aspects of that farm. And again, that cemented the importance of food and healing for me. And I absolutely adored it. I came out of that program. I became committed to leading a life involving all those things. Um, uh, and then I soon after that, I joined the board of the Metuchen Farmers Market, and I was lucky enough to become the president of that the last 2 years. It's extraordinarily important to me. We brought it into a 501c nonprofit. And in that position, I really get to use my job. So in the day job, we serve books and libraries and collectors. And then in my private life, I have this unique position to use that material, use those books, and share it with my community. So those are some of the things that we're going to share tonight. I have examples of those things, and Lizzy and I hope to express some of that passion that we have for food and culinary literature with you tonight. So
Well, that's great. Well, we've heard from one slackard here that doesn't do anything. Holy macros! When do you sleep? That's great, Christine. Lizzy, tell us a little about yourself and how
Hi.
you
Well,
got into this world. All right.
happy summer to everybody. I'm wearing my Fire Island shirt because it's my favorite summer place.
Good surfing spot.
Yeah, so I think that I feel like food has the memory part. So food memories for me actually go back really early. Pretty much all of my memories going back to childhood have to do with food. For instance, I took piano lessons and I liked my piano lessons, but my teacher, she was a Chinese immigrant. And one of the reasons why I stuck with it was because when we'd have our recitals, she she would make these big banquets. And basically, I think I stayed playing piano because of the shrimp toast. So food has always been it has always been something that's always brought me places. Brian did a great job of giving you my outline, but I went to art school. I dropped out because I couldn't afford it anymore, and I realized the closest thing to art that was a working job was pastry. So I went into that, and as he said, I studied with a great man, Nick Melgeri, who is still teaching. He's a wonderful man. I worked at various restaurants, around New York, ending up at Windows on the World, which was quite interesting because there was 2 floors of people in the towers, 100 people, 4 women. So I lived the experience that most people read about in books. And after that, I got a job at Gourmet Magazine. I got in the back door. It was great. I ended up in the kitchen. But when I was first at Gourmet Magazine, I was an assistant editor, and my desk was in the library. And I got to spend my days in this beautiful, it was huge, library filled with cookbooks. And I remember sitting there going, wow, I have arrived. Like, if I can just do this for the rest of my life, I will be happy. I didn't do that for the rest of my life. I raised 2 children and worked for my dad. So I've always had my finger in food. I'm fascinated about food culture, again, food memories. I do think that food is something that brings everybody together because everybody eats. And that, you can always talk to people about food. If there's a, pause in a conversation, you can talk about food. So food to me is the jam. And that's my story.
Well, that is quite a story, and we're so glad you're both with us.
Thank you,
Lizzy,
Brian.
let's get you started. You brought some examples of some books and manuscripts you wanted to cover that kind of fit into our topic today. And again, we're not just talking cookbooks; we're talking about all kinds of other things. So, give us a little more insight on that. We'll let you kind of kick off your deck first, and then we'll get over to Christine's thoughts.
Sure. So what you're looking at right now is this wonderful letter from 1846 from Margaret Scammon. She was the wife of a Civil War brigadier general, Eliakim Parker Scammon. And they were living in West Point at the time. And she wrote this letter to her brother. I also love the way she writes one way, she writes the other way. The whole letter is folded into itself. And she's writing to her brother she's apologizing to her brother about the barrel of beer that has not gotten to him yet. He's living in Springfield, Massachusetts, and she's talking about the missing beer battle, beer, whatever, the big barrel thing. And I guess this was something that people would do. So this letter just, it's between a brother and sister, and she is apologizing about this beer barrel that hasn't reached him yet. So I love this piece. Another piece that I had and I don't have anymore that I think really talks about how food and the material culture come together. I did have this 1707 manuscript from England. The woman's name was Rachel Kirk. And it was a handwritten, beautiful, like leather-bound manuscript, but it was remedies and recipes. And what was so amazing about it was the remedies. When she was talking about the herbs that she used in the remedies, she gave a description of where you could find them in London. And these are places that we can still see. So to me, this was like this thing that you could just still go to these corners. I'm sure there wasn't, broom or one of the remedies was for cure of breast cancer, and it was using broom. Which is a plant. And so I loved this, that it was you could go to these places still and try to find these things. So that's another example we don't have a picture of. Okay, the next one is something else that I think I sold to University of Delaware. So this is a archive of a pastry chef. So back in the day, pastry chefs would have their own formulas and they would write them down in books. So this starts out in 1924. He was a Russian emigre. He left Russia, went to Monte Carlo, went to France, Croatia, England, ended up in the United States in 1952. It's 16 volumes and 4 languages. And when I got this, I was just fascinated with, first of all, the recipes, but also the language and the places that this man was. And so I actually reached out to my pastry chef, my pastry teacher, Nick, because his language skills were amazing. And so he and I went through this and he helped me translate it. And it just shows the depth of how he lived within food, and having it all written down by hand is one of those things that just, is, unfortunately, I'm not sure if it is still living to this day. I'm hoping that chefs still have their personal little books in their kitchens and writing down their own recipes, because it really is a treasure trove to see what ingredients people were using, what ingredients we can't find anymore, and how are they reusing them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's all in ink. Was that all solid color? Oh, is this also the same image?
Yeah. I mean, it was 16 different. It went from his early years in the 1920s, when he started out in Monte Carlo, all the way to when he was working in the United States. I find he actually ended up back in Europe, and he died in Europe, but it gives his whole history.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I do think
That's
he was
great.
trying to write a cookbook.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it ever happened, but there was times in the manuscript that it looked like he was thinking about writing a book. This next photo is something that I think people don't realize, that paper was scarce and that people would use anything they had. So what we call is repurposed. You repurposed a book. So this was a treasurer's cash book. So on other pages, they were actually used by somebody who was using it for accounting. But this person was using it for their recipes. And the other thing that I absolutely love is that people will take anything and write their recipes on them, a back of a letter. I've seen things on anything you think of that is a piece of paper. The other thing that I wanted to just highlight, one of my favorite things that I've ever had in my possession was a German woman who had emigrated from Germany to the United States. She had 3 books. It started out, I think, in 1910. It started out in German, her writing of her recipes, and it ended up in English. But what the most amazing thing about this collection was that there was tons of ephemera. People just use their cookbooks almost as family Bibles, and they would just stick pieces of paper in it and they would write recipes on it. Well, you really have to look at every single piece of paper. So on the back of a typewritten letter, she had written a recipe, and when I translated the letter that was in German, it turns out that it was a letter from the Jewish infantry for people to try to find work. And what was so sad was the person who had signed off on this letter. I researched them, and they died in concentration camps. So these are the things. It's history. You can't overlook how food and history go together.
That's fascinating. And you just wonder how many of these things got tossed because they were
Oh,
considered ephemera. And, is now you can track down and find out if he actually ever did create that cookbook, that pastry chef. So there's
I did. I
there's
really
still a
tried.
lot
I
to
don't.
look for.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
exactly.
did, really. That's great. Christine, you have some examples as well, correct?
I do, yeah. And to point, we'll circle back to ephemera too, because that's an area people ask, what's really hot, what's important in collecting, and ephemera is a big section of that.
All
So
right. We will certainly make sure we do that.
we have that. But I knew that Lizzie was going to be talking about those terrific manuscripts to give you an idea of what personal books, personal collections were like. So I wanted to give a little a flip side to that to show examples of more modern books and what they can show. So this is a beautiful copy of called Where Paris Dines. I choose this as an example of 20th century culinary work with a personal association. So this is a book written by Julian Street. It was published in Garden City in 1929, actually just months before Black Tuesday, the Great Depression. So we're looking at a book that is a first edition with this fabulous Art Deco dust jacket. The book chronicles the Paris dining scene at the height of the Roaring Twenties. I mean, you see that great cover, right? This beautiful couple, this restaurant. So the American journalist Julian Street, what he did in the book is he covered neighborhood favorite restaurants and venerable culinary landmarks, like the Tour d'Argent, which was founded in 1582 and still serves pressed duck to this day, and also hot spots like Zelli's, where Josephine Baker hung out. But in the back has this great guide to ordering French brandies and liqueurs and wines. So it's a helpful book and sort of a who's who and what's what. And what I love about it too is that it comes with a type letter signed, and that is a letter that Street inscribed to Charles Hanson Towne, who was the editor of Harper's Bazaar from 1926 to 29, a quintessential New Yorker. So he's including this letter to Street, which he signs Judy, which he Oh, the book rather. The book is inscribed to him, signed Judy, which he did for close friends. But the book signed Julian actually thanks Charlie, the Harper's Bazaar editor, for letting him, publish this recent story as his last act as editor. So it's a really beautiful example. And the next one is a sweet book. This I've chosen because it marries graphic design with children's literature, and it's something that I used recently to connect with children at the big New York Antiquarian Book Fair. Lizzie and I have booths there. That's the big book fair that takes place at the New York Armory, and we have families coming, collectors, curators. And a lot of children come through there. So we always like to have things at the Honey and Wax booth that reaches everyone. This I loved. This is a book that was written by Sandal Stoddard Warburg and illustrated by Ivan Chermayev, who's the titan of American graphic design. It's a beautiful little book published in 1961, and it's a lyrical picture book which imagines the experience of an older child that he'll share one day with his or her new sibling. And it's very much grounded in images and words that feature sensory experiences drawn from the natural world. And Chermayev, who's a brilliant designer, he's traded with Paul Rand and Ivan Lustig. You know him from his logos for NBC and Chase and Museum of Modern Art. Real master, but his hand is so beautiful here in explaining the natural world. And I love how the page on the right speaks to that. And it says, if the sky were a garden, we would plant the vegetables upside down, and you'll see upside down is printed as such. So a little play with typography there. And it ends with, that song is green. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It looks gorgeous. That's great.
Modern counterpoints. Yeah. And then,
There's
as
a
I
lot
said,
more children at the ABA fairs these days. It's really fun to see people bringing their children to the book fairs. It's a great thing.
isn't it? I know, it's fun. We had one kid who his mother allowed him to buy one thing. He's like, you can buy one thing at the book fair. We had this display of arsenical bindings, the poison green cloth bindings. And he thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And he went around the whole fair and he came back and he said, that's what I want to get. So
Poison book. I want a poison book.
I know, we sold a poison book to a child. You can scratch that out. The whole transcript.
That's good. That's great. We'll be editing this out of the program.
We didn't chew on it. But segueing into what we were saying before, the next thing we would love to talk about is ephemera and the importance,
Why don't we, should we say what ephemera is? I have so many friends who.
That's a great idea.
Who I say that to, and they're fascinated with the word. And when I explained it to them, it blows them away. So go for it, Christine.
Yeah, that's it. So, ephemera is a broad definition, but, ephemeral things are things that don't last. So we consider these things paper items. It runs the gamut. It could be in our world, menus, and I'll explain this entrance ticket in a moment. There are things that were printed for specific purposes,
and
but
they weren't
not
necessarily to be kept, right? It's not something you would keep maybe as a souvenir, but probably not. It was stuff that once the date had passed or the time had passed, it just got tossed, right?
Exactly. So it's like, posters, letters, books. The list goes on. And, a lot of places didn't collect ephemera for a long time. And even books and culinary literature in general, it was considered prosaic, mundane. You didn't save these things. They weren't considered important. But looking back, we realize the stories they can tell us.
And also because we are running out of those things now because of everything is so digital, that I think it's become even more important to look at them in a different way.
Absolutely.
Great point.
Yeah. So the thing I have here, even though several were printed, not many survive. And what we're looking at here is it's a wonderful artifact of the Victorian literary scene. So this is the engraved ticket to Charles Dickens' farewell dinner, which was given in London in November of 1867. And it was on the occasion, as it says, on the occasion of his departure for the United States, Freemasons Hall, Great Queen Street, and the date of the event at 7 o'clock. So it was this little pale green coated card, 3 by 4.5 inches, tiny little thing, but somebody saved it. They tucked it away, number 70. Not sure if they made it to the dinner or not. There's not a name, but they could have used it, or maybe did not attend and saved it. But it's fabulous because this is right before Dickens is going on his final reading tour of the United States. This grand farewell dinner was given at Freemasons Hall. It was attended by almost 500 guests. Matthew Arnold, Wilkie Collins, Tennyson, Trollope, great names of the time, and he was about to go to America he'd been to America in 1842 to explore copyright issues, and to see the American institutions, see the country for himself. So this is happening 25 years later. He's going back to America to and I should say at that time when he came back from America, he was very disappointed, and he chronicled that disappointment in his two major books, American Notes and Martin Chuzzlewit. So 25 years later, he comes back to the States. He wants to see for himself how it's improved. He is, Dickens is a huge personality. He wants to make money. He called this his case in a nutshell. He wants to come to America, make a ton of money on this great reading tour, which he did. I mean, he went on 76 performances for 5 months, earned £19,000, and he also had a final dinner there. So this is an important little piece of paper that presaged his last trip to America, and it's amazing. That's in great shape. So I'm really thrilled to have that.
And it was one guinea to get in.
One guinea, I know. It was not. But it was really huge. Oh, and so actually, when he came back from America the second time, he was impressed, and he actually he wrote an appendix to those two books with updates to make amends. So lest he.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. And the next slide I have this is really sweet. So this is actually not something that we sold at Honey and Wax, but I choose this because it's very dear to me. It was a gift to me by one of my dear friends who's also a fellow bookseller. It's lovingly worn. It is so charming. It marries, and I love it because it marries the Hudson Valley history with New Jersey history. And I actually use this in outreach and a digital newsletter that we put out for the farmers market, to talk about New Jersey crops and their history. Apples are a huge crop in New Jersey. It's a staple crop going back to the 17th century. The first distillery license #1 was in New Jersey for Laird's apple brandy. It was favorite. Yeah, we've got like strong roots. So this is a super cute book. It's its proud heritage was actually touted in print, as you can see here. So this is really cute. It's a nod to the local agriculture, but it's a thoroughly unsubtle morality tale of work ethics and education, which was typical of children's books at that period. The titular New Jersey apple girl was little Meggie, the hardworking daughter of a New Brunswick farmer who sells these little pippin apples off the steamboat docks of the Raritan. So stuff that's happening 2 miles from my house. So I absolutely love it. Printed by Mail and Day, who was a really important printer of children's books, chapbooks, and a Morristown native. Shout out to the Morristown people. And I just love its charm, that tatty cover, that it's sewn along the spine and along the back. I actually I have the little thing here with me, like the little back is all sewn, the holes, and, so here's a piece, and it nearly didn't survive, but it did, and it was used to teach children and inform people. And another cute thing about it is that the little notes, it has little footnotes with history. So it says right here that Pippins tells you about the apples. Pippins have a sharp, bright flavor, and the word comes from the Dutch popinga. So it's a little teacher as well. So it's a survival, not unlike our orchards. So I love that piece. And then my last piece of ephemera, is I love this because it marries my other love of illustration art with design and ephemera. So this is a beautiful wallpaper design. It's an original pen and watercolor wrapping paper design for the Eiffler Seed Company in Vienna in 1950. The designer was a woman, Helga Jacek Becker. And she was a very accomplished commercial artist who did packaging for a number of food brands. I love this brightly colored vegetables and flowers alternating with the lines of text, with the word salmon, which is seeds, and the little street address of the company. So that's a lovely piece. And I think we sold that for, I think that was like $750. To give you an idea of what is ephemera sell for, it's probably helpful to jump in and tell you that too. So this piece sold for $750 a few years ago, to give you a sense of rarity and beauty and what something like this brings in the open market.
That's fascinating. That's great. Now, I'm sure you've covered all the ephemera, and Lizzy doesn't have any ephemera to share with us tonight. Is that right, Lizzy? Am I wrong on this?
No, what's so funny is that the problem with ephemera is that it's paper and it's flat. So I'm sure, like Christine, you have a lot of it. And it gets, sometimes actually somebody will order something from you and you can't find it. And you run around and you go, where is it? Where is it? And you finally find it. But yeah, if the paper part and the fact that you can have a lot of it, Brian, I have a lot. I have a lot that's uncatalogued. So this is actually something that I recently cataloged that was in a pile of menus, because another interesting thing about what's going on right now is that since COVID, I look at menus a little differently, because all of a sudden you have these QR codes, right? And I'm seeing that menus in and of themselves are becoming even more rare. It's like when you go to a restaurant, you're not always handed a menu. So this is another piece of history that shows, how people were living, 25, 50, 100, 200 years ago. So now I'm looking at menus a little differently. So this was in a pile of menus. And this is a 1905 Japanese menu from the Wright's Hotel in Yokohama. And it was right after, at the end of the Russo-Japanese War. And so on the back, I was actually able to read the whole thing. I believe it's a soldier. It could have been a businessman. But they go into I think they're writing to their sister or something, but it really goes into what was happening on the ground at the time. So that's the other thing. It just gives you a glimpse into the very moment that, they were eating mulligatawny soup and, boiled salmon with tartar sauce. So you turn the menu over and he's talking about a steamer that's coming into the harbor, and they're dealing with mines in the harbor. And on the steamer was the statesman, I forget his name. He was the one who signed the treaty in Portsmouth in the United States to end the war. And it goes into all the details of what is happening on the ground. And to me, the menu itself is beautiful, and the fact that you have this great graphics on the front, and you have the handwritten items on the menu, but then the real beauty comes into this letter. Somebody used this menu to write their sister about what was going on at the time. So that to me, is a lot. And I was very excited to do the research on it.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Tells us so much about what's going on. There was actually recently a terrific exhibition at the Grolier Club.
Yes.
Member Henry Voigt, who's a member.
Henry is a big menu collector. He has amazing collection.
And you can see when they're all together, the stories that menus can tell, very reflective of time and place and economy. It was a great.
I think the next one is another menu. Yes, this is from 1886. This is a menu, a British military catering menu. So interestingly enough, they wrote these things out. It was the officers of the 3rd and 4th Battalion of the West Riding Regiment in York, England. And it tells where they were lodged, which was in the de Grey rooms. And it describes the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but it also goes on to talk about the things that were not, that they could not get, like what they would have to pay for like per diem if they wanted other things. But I just think it's this, plain sheet of paper that just has survived with beautiful handwriting. That's another thing. This beautiful handwriting, you find amazing handwriting in these things. And it's, one day, or maybe one day or 1 week in lives of this regiment. And to me, tells the story of what was going on again on the ground at the time.
That's really incredible. I mean, letters can tell us things that you can't find anywhere else that in normal history books, and some of them actually either enhance or reinforce what we know, or give us a whole different perspective on something that we had no idea was going on at the time.
Right. I mean, Brian, when I go to somebody's house to look at books, one of the other things I say to them is, did they keep their letters? Did they have anything that they personally collected in terms of paper items? Because generally,
Sure.
when people are disposing or getting rid of the things that somebody has, they don't think of that.
Understood. Very true. Very
Yeah, I
true.
mean,
Good.
for instance, there's a very famous woman who was a cookbook editor, and the family overlooked her filing cabinet. And
Wow.
it's like they really had no interest in doing anything with it. But I was like, this is amazing history right here. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
So let me ask you both a question. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you short. Go ahead,
sure,
Lizzy.
no problem. No, it's just like, that's that I feel like that's also our job, is
Sure.
to inform people that these small little things are really important.
And one of the manuscripts, part of the Manuscript Society mission is dedicated to collecting, researching, and preserving kind of manuscripts and documents. And this kind of all fits in. So let me ask you both, what is the ultimate menu of all time that everybody would want, or you would want to kind of come across and be totally excited about?
Oh, wow.
I know. I got mine in mind. I just wasn't sure if you had yours in mind.
I mean, I would say like a menu that you had MFK Fisher, Julia Child, and James Beard out in Provence when they all got together out
Oh,
there.
yeah, right, right.
That
Good.
would be
Yep.
really cool to see what they were eating and who was, talking trash about somebody else. I like, on the back of it, Fisher she was really salty, and she would probably, be like, oh, that James.
Christine, got an
Yeah.
idea?
I was just say things that did like survival of shipwrecks, like there's like the Titanic menu.
Yeah, I
That
was thinking White Star Line Titanic. That would have been one of my heads. Sure, for sure.
I
Yeah.
think there was one just up for auction, right?
There,
Didn't
there was, I believe
yeah,
so. I don't have any details on it, but that'd be great.
yeah.
Good. Hey, before we get into your next topic, let me got a shout out from Mark Grossman from Briarcliff Manor says hi. Ellen Clark out of Arlington, Virginia says hello. Pat Vacara, our writer and editor of the news, says hello from Chicago. Sarah Hassan from New York says hi, and Leslie McCarthy from Summit, New Jersey. They all send their best to you, and they're glad they're tuned in tonight. There, and they're all waving back. So let's put this all together. Let's kind of go from the table to the library, and then after we do that, I hear you got a goodie bag to share with us before we wrap up at 9 o'clock. Got ourselves about 15 minutes to go on this.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's true. The idea of coming to the table, right? The metaphor, the reality of it is where we all come together. We can sit around the table. People come from all different backgrounds. We can discuss our differences. It's a beautiful place to blend ideas and to discuss things and kind of leave less savory topics aside, shall we say. But the point that we wanted to make is that It's not only a universal need, it's something that brings us together culturally and socially. And collectors, and especially universities now, are really excited about this material. Lizzie and I have a lot of institutional buyers, and it's really because this, it's kind of a gateway topic.
It's the gateway drug.
Food studies affect all disciplines, right? It's economics, science, gender studies, sociology, environmental studies, pop culture, and
wars were fought over, Venice is there because of salt. So yeah, I mean, it is.
yeah.
And the special collection, people tell me that it's perfect because again, everyone eats, right? And so when they want to get their students involved in libraries, and maybe they, it wasn't their first choice, and maybe they didn't really want to come into the library, understand the library, but once you hand them a manuscript written by a person, real person, whether it was from, America or another country, but especially, if you're studying here, they're like, oh, wow, this is amazing.
It really, connects with everything. And it's a wonderful way of, of teaching, prescriptive literature and rhetorical analysis, things that are really important. This material, as I said before, it was protean. It was overlooked. You didn't pay attention to it, but now it's a very important topic of study. And, and the other thing that's happening too is the way it's being cataloged now. We have to talk about issues like the disambiguation. When I think it was just in 2010, for example, that the Library of Congress standardized the language in their search engines to cooking, because before that you could find things in cookery or cookbook as two separate words, or cookbook as one word, right? So without this standardization, it also becomes very difficult to find and catalog this material and preserve it. So that is happening now too, in conjunction with these acquisitions.
Right. And they learn so much. For instance, like if you're looking at somebody's handwritten cookbook and you're seeing how, like, you try to figure out how much water do they need to get for each thing that they're making, and realizing the trips that they had to take back and forth. Or I know they've figured out from some very old Hawaiian menus of fish that don't exist anymore. So there's a lot of ways that these things are used, within libraries. And I do think, what would you say, Christine, like in the last 15 years, 20 years, it's really been something that people have been looking at more, yeah.
Yeah, we have a number of manuscript cookbooks in the last 10 years, and they share so much about the society and culture, and it's heartening to see the funding being raised for that.
And it also there's also a fun side to it too. I've noticed that a lot of people are doing this thing where they're asking people to figure out what things say, because script is sometimes really hard to decipher. And so they do this whole thing where they, put it out to everybody, and everybody has to try to figure out, like, what does this say? And it's kind of a game, it's kind of fun, and it also is engaging.
What about measurement? I'm sorry, go ahead, Christine. I'm going to cut you short. Go ahead.
Entire online source that they looked in rare books libraries and chose manuscripts that were kind of hiding, transcribed them, explained them, and are forming a database of that material. So it's, things like that are happening now.
Great. And I mean, also see about measurements, a scooch of this, a dash of this, and what is that? And my grandmother is Norwegian. We try to translate stuff, and some of those words don't even translate. We don't know how much of that went in.
Well, and I mean, they didn't have measurements either. It was just,
they didn't have measurements. You were supposed to know what you were doing. You were the thing when I first got into this business, and I was really interested in food, and I thought, I'm going to find all these diaries with all this, all these recipes. And it turns out, I mean, especially from the US, it turns out that people weren't writing down recipes. They were saying them it was an audible kind of thing.
Sure, I
So you
see.
were standing next to somebody and they were telling you. And so, yeah, you were saying a pinch of that or a pinch of this. And, my grandmother taught me how to make her mandelbread. And when I'm standing next to her and she went, it says, a quarter cup of milk, and she goes into the freezer and gets vanilla ice cream. And I'm like, Nana, what, it says, she goes, I don't use that. I use vanilla ice cream. And I'm like, well, you didn't write that down. But that's the thing about recipes, and it's a language. It's a language all to its own. So yeah.
Right. And how many of those recipes didn't get shared because it was a
I
family
know.
secret? I'm not showing you how we made that because I'm
Oh,
going to be the
yes.
one who makes it, right?
Yes, absolutely. I've firsthand experienced that. Yes.
I know. I just sold one of the copies of Rex Stout's Nero Wolfe novels, and the plot is, a chef that gets murdered because somebody wants the sauce recipe. I mean, it's, we're murdering for sauce recipes. So
That's so great. Hey, so I know you have a goodie bag too as we're getting towards the end here. And then I got lots of questions, and we may have some questions from our folks too. So I understand you packed a little goodie bag for us. Can you share some of those things with us tonight?
absolutely, we're going to speed round.
Oh,
we're going to just
yes.
So
Yeah, so I think I have one thing here that it's just a sweet, cute little thing. It's 1987 children's cookbook by 6, 7-year-olds. I figured it out. It was from Portland, Oregon, and I just love that. Actually, yeah, the next one, yes. So the children were asked, what is your parents' favorite recipe, and then they phonetically spelled it out, and then they drew a picture, and it just, I mean, lettuce, like tomato, onion, celery. I mean, salad, pizza. I just think that this shows how food is a language in and of itself, and that you can speak the language at any age. And I just love this little community cookbook. It's one of my favorites.
absolutely love it. And the little pictures.
That's great. I love 3.5 cups of yeast and maybe a little bit of flour. What else you got for
What have
us?
we got next?
Yeah, then I've got a grab bag. I'm going to go fast with these because there's just so many cute ones to do. But we took in a big collection last year of publishers' bindings, beautiful 19th century publishers' bindings, which is when the art of bindings really came to be, and through technological and artistic advances, and food was a wonderful avenue for binders to show off their talents. So you could hear two great 19th century examples. On the left is Drôlerie Végétale, which is by Eugène New, which is a satirical view of humanity and its follies, reflecting the goings-on of this like denizens of a vegetable kingdom with the most hilarious illustrations. On the right is Brillat Severin's book, Physiologie du Goût, which is the Bible of gastronomy, with the wonderful wine bottles. You can see the gold and the pressing and the cloth, just beautiful. And then the next image this is terrific. The next slide, Fancy Ices. This is a book that Lizzie and I have handled numerous times.
I've never seen it in this good shape. This is amazing. This is spectacular.
Every book in this collection was a pristine copy. It was the best example of its kind. So it's beautiful to work with. Fancy Ices is written by Agnes Marshall. She had a cooking school in London. So this was written in 1894. It's called the Queen of Ices, and she was one of the first female celebrity chefs, and she made ice cream popular in England when it was just kind of like a side fancy. So she did her part, and we have this awesome book to prove it. And then the following books, so I'll end with these last three. Shaped books were very popular. This is kind of like a combination of ephemera and the art of bindings. This is authenticated American Indian recipes, which was printed in Oklahoma in 1955 in the shape of an American Indian. And then let's see what the next slide. Oh, crisp toast is adorable. So that's a little recipe book on toast that was written in 1907, and all the pages are different sandwiches and toast, but just adorable to behold. And then the last slide I love this. This
I
is
love
the
that. I've had that one. I love that. It's so great.
Isn't that so much fun? So
Yeah.
that's great. That's a recipe book. It's the White House cereals. It was done by the Standard Rice Company around 1940, and it has this trompe l'oeil cereal box design. And what I absolutely love about it is that it hits on all the domestic science buzzwords of the time. So if you read it, it says, recipe book, White House cereals, pure, wholesome, delicious, sold only in hermetically sealed wax paper wrapped cartons. So you got it all right there.
Wow. Pretty incredible. Tim said, I'm ducking in and out of the bookshop because it's open. Will there be a recorded version to watch at a later time? And we're certainly going to cover that. Yeah, we're going to record this. Liz going to do a little editing, clean it up. It's going to go up on our Manuscript Society YouTube channel, so you can see it anywhere. And Sarah says, crisp toasts and fancy ice are my two favorites. Could be the name of a culinary focused bookshop, she says.
Ooh, I like that.
So a couple of things as we wrap up. Other thoughts? I'm going to just ask you a question about, there are food channels now. I mean, there never used to be a food channel. You had like one cooking show, maybe somewhere along the line. Now
Galloping
it's 24/7.
Gourmet.
Yeah, and there's so much now, and there's even stuff on Netflix and some of the major cable about food shows like Bear and all the others. Tell us why the interest? What do you think has caused that, and this whole surge of food and cooking, and it started long before for COVID, so I can't just say everybody trying to bake bread and find yeast in the supermarket during COVID.
I mean, I go back to the fact that, again, food, everybody experiences food. When I became a pastry chef, I knew I'd always have a job because people eat. Everybody experiences food, and it's it's all the senses, right? It's the smelling, it's the visual, and it's the taste. And I just think that the people who were in charge of TV realized that, it's a no-brainer, and I'm sure it's fairly easy to be produced. But what do you think, Christine?
Yeah, no, I agree. And we really have, come into the age of the celebrity chef. The personalities were able to do that. People are touring now. They go on talks, they write books. Also, what got me interested in it, the health related aspect of it. So you've got farm to table, you've got celebrity chef. There are all these things that bring you into it. We even have ingredients that are super popular. People are touting that. I mean, I'm wearing my little vintage cabbage because cabbage is having a moment now. Who knew? It's cabbage. It's everywhere.
Cabbage is having a moment. Is it beating out kale?
Cabbage, no. You know what's beating out kale? It's pickles. Pickles. Oh my God. I saw pickle cupcakes on Instagram the other day. I was like,
no
stop.
kidding. We see deep fried pickles at the county fair, but that's as far as we get with it,
Yeah.
I wonder if pickle ice cream was in fancy ices. That's something. Look in the back.
That's interesting.
That is not.
Mark asked if you can comment on any bibliographies of rare books. While we put your contact info up there, here's how you can reach out to Christine and Lizzy. Copy that down or do a little screenshot of that so you can. She'll answer tons of your questions. But we got a little time. Any ideas about bibliographies of rare food books or?
Yeah, I mean, my two favorite for the U.S. is the Lowenstein book, and then the Brown book. Oh my God, I'm not off the top of my head. I can't remember what do you know the names? What the titles are, Christine? Eleanor Lowenstein is the author, and then that's the early American cookbooks, and then the one after that is the Evan Brown and his wife. Do you know the names?
Yeah. Also, a bidding is another reference that's really important. There are a number of it's not. We're happy to provide a list of those in an email.
That'd be great. Good. We'll
publication date. Some of them have been updated, so
good deal. All right, let me cover a little bit on the Manuscript Society. We'll come back to you for some wrap-up comments. Lee, pop up that slide about the Manuscript Society. We're a not-for-profit organization dedicated to collecting, research, and preserving manuscripts and documents. Anyone can join. You go to manuscript.org. and we have a great scholarship that's offered to graduate students through the Richard Moss Research. Let me tell you what we think is coming up shortly. There's no certificate of attendance available for this program, but in about a week or so, you're going to see this up on the Manuscript Society's YouTube channel. You go to manuscript.org. That's singular, manuscript.org. I want to thank the trustees and the staff of the Manuscript Society, certainly to our amazing presenters, and to you for being our guest tonight. Let me talk about what's coming up on the first Monday in August. I got it right here. Maybe I don't have it right here. I'm looking. It's here somewhere. Don't go away. I got it. I got to find it. Don't go.
Well,
Give
I'll
me a
say
second.
thank you, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead. You do that. Well, I'm
Thank you,
looking.
Lee, and thank you, Brian, for having us. I really appreciate it.
This was absolutely delightful. Coming up in August, we're going to talk about preserving documents. You got a great collection. How do you protect it? So we're going to talk about what's going to happen and how you can properly preserve it with a specialist who is that. And that's Rebecca Elder is going to be doing that for us. And that's the first Monday in October. So give us a couple of last minute thoughts about food before we wrap this one up.
I would say, first, I want to thank Carrie Stanny, who conceived this entire program as a fun summer picnic event. I'm so glad. She's home taking care of her mom now and couldn't be part of it, but we kind of dedicate this to her. Very wonderful,
Great
sweet
idea.
woman. And I would say, on behalf of us, support your libraries, please. Support your booksellers, support your institutions. Help us
Independent
preserve.
booksellers, yes.
Love it.
Great.
Help your booksellers.
Great. Lizzy?
Yep. No, just, yes, support your independent booksellers, and don't throw anything out.
Got it. All right. Mark says, thanks for the info and a great presentation. Sarah says, this was so much fun. Thank you, Christine and Lizzy. And Heather O'Donnell says, thanks, guys. And with that, I will thank you as well. And I thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next month right here on Manuscript Monday. Good night, y'all.
All right, take care. Good night.